Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier. I am here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Rock and roll, my friend. I am excited for today's episode. We have just come out of a challenge week, and we're going to label today's topic as Embrace the Suck.
Embrace the suck. I like that.
You didn't know I was going to leave with that, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that's what we were calling it, but I think it's fitting, and I think anyone who's done any amount of fasting can relate to that feeling at least on occasion, right?
Yep. So what does that mean? Can mean a lot of different things. So we're just going to dive right in it and hopefully give you some actionable things that you can do to kind of break through, work through, and shift the framework just a little bit. As we always talk that, we want to create a lifestyle. We want this to fit. We want this to get the results. And all too often we have so many people that come to us that have had on and off relationships with fasting, just like they have with other diets that have failed in the past. They have ups and downs. They've tried it. They dabbled. They did some IF. They tried keto. They've done all these, whatever it is, low carb, paleo, whatever. And they just haven't been able to get the process to stick, so to speak. And there's some sticking points there that I think we can help uncover and maybe frame the embracing the suck and embracing the process. So I think it's going to be, I know you and I work on this stuff personally in our own lives and, with what we're building here and our communication and how we've had successes and failures with our health in the past. So I really think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this stuff can come up regardless of where you are in your fasting journey. If you're in the beginning or the middle, or you consider yourself a fasting ninja, it doesn't really matter. These things can always be points of improvement and can always come up for everyone.
Yeah, and we want sustainability. We want long-term results, right? So we want something that is going to be successful. We don't want to have the yo-yo ebb and flow and the ups and downs and the lack of long-term result. If you've been on a weight loss journey, that losing 20 can be done. Sometimes it's harder than others, but gaining 25 is pretty damn easy. Right. So it's, we want to set it up.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's very easy to do that. And if you're one of those 5 or 10%ers out there that can eat anything that you want and never see an adverse change, God bless you. Because you are a unicorn. So for us mere mortals, what does embrace the suck mean? I really want to start with a quote from Brendon Burchard, High Performance Habits. It's often not reaching the goal that matters, but who we become in the process. And to me, that's a little fluffy in nature, meaning it's a little kind of like abstract. Oh yeah, that sounds great. You don't know my situation. You don't know my struggle. You don't know where I'm coming from. We put up these defense mechanisms. Like when you told me standing in your kitchen couple years ago, stop eating, you need to start fasting. And I was like, dude, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars. I have all of this clinical experience. I have degrees. Like, what do you mean?
Right. Just
space out your meals? And then you handed me the book. And then I went, okay, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I put up my defense mechanism there. But
okay.
Yeah, thank you. We've moved on. We've reconciled. So it's really focusing on what happens in the moment and what happens in a single decision, and then really putting together a system or a jig or a framework that you can work off of to rely on the system rather than relying on your decision-making and emotional decision-making in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great point is, some of this comes down to what are those key things that you can rely on, that instead of having to make dozens and dozens or even hundreds of decisions in a given day, how can you bring that down to where a little bit of planning goes a long way, and kind of thinking ahead, like if you have something important coming up for the week, or you have potential pitfalls, temptations in the pantry, whatever it might be, even insulating yourself from some of those things, so you don't have to make all those tough decisions in the moment, and some of those things can become much more automatic, and that's part of embracing the suck too, I think.
Yeah, it's it's so interesting. Having failed, I like to say, failed forward my whole life,
Hmm.
and still learning throughout the process. Is a lot of the times, when we have these moments of clarity that you and I think it might be something of value to discuss or have a conversation about, which is always the whole goal of this, is meeting people where they're at, where we were at, and then trying to shed some light on how we can move forward and fail forward, so to speak.
Right.
um, we tend to get caught up in the suck and not the embracing part. So what I mean by that is, in a moment you have a decision where you can, you've had a relationship with fasting, like I mentioned, it's worked, it hasn't worked, just like any other calorie restriction or diet or exercise program or personal trainer or South Beach book you bought at Barnes and Noble, whatever it is. We really want to focus on the decision in the moment when you go off the rails, or you're about to go off the wagon, or you're about to go binge crazy, or you're about to indulge because you deserve it because you've had a stressful day, or whatever those situations are. In that moment, there's a couple of realizations that we feel are important to possibly take place, and hopefully let you reframe this in a failing forward, embracing the moment kind of situation. And it's really the two things to start with would be, what happened yesterday does not matter, and
Hmm.
5 minutes ago does not matter. So if you're in the middle of finishing the sleeve of Oreos, right then in the moment, what you just did really doesn't matter to the potential goal or future you that you want to become or outcome, unless you make a different decision in that moment.
Right. And it's not about giving yourself an easy out and just, not setting up a boundary
Yeah,
for
woe
the
is
next
me,
time. But
right?
right. It's not about that at all. But in that moment when you realize, I really am doing something that's going against where I want to be going, that's taking me further away from my goals, then now is right then is the perfect time to make a new decision. But what happens so often, and what we've seen, and what happens during the middle of a challenge sometimes, is we can see some of that old bad psychology, that those negative feedback loops coming back in and going, well, I didn't quite meet the window yesterday, and I did XYZ, or I binged, or something else that I was trying to avoid. But just bringing that along with us, rather than making a new decision now and then moving forward towards our goals. If we hold on to those things that we already, those mistakes that we made in the past, that can just bring us way further away rather than moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and one of the pushbacks that we get from people that aren't familiar with fasting is, some of those negative external connotations of what it really is. It's not starving yourself. It's really just simply meal timing.
Right.
It's helping your body burn some of that stored energy that you have put on through the indulgences over the years. For me, it was the old indulgences, the old habits of working out. It was stress. It was medications at certain points. It was poor sleep. There's all these other different things that can further the weight loss resistance struggle.
Right.
But in the moment is really where we want to focus, because if you've been like me or you or the people that we talk to, or the people that go through our challenges or programs, or even just shoot us a message on Facebook Messenger or send us an email, is that decision in the moment. If you don't decide to make it or change it, then the pattern is going to pretty much repeat itself. So there's a few words that we want to focus on today um, that have been a personal struggle, but also we see as kind of a consistency in being able to make that decision to change the outcome for the next time it comes around. And I'll go over. I'll open that up in just a second, Tommy. The one thing I do want to clarify is this whole concept of a system or a plan. having some structure to fall back on and not falling back into the category of just, I didn't have enough willpower today, or I wasn't strong enough, or anything else that comes along with that. We came across this new concept of a jig, which was, I've heard of it in the past, like a jigsaw, but I didn't realize that the purpose of a jig is to get reproducible results without having to increase the amount of work put out. It's also going to, systematize the delivery of the result. So you're going to have less brain power, less energy put out. You're going to, take that almost pressure off in the moment and just be like, okay, well, in the moment, does this align with my end goal? No, it doesn't. Okay, well, now I need to make a decision. Well, no, you don't. You just go back to the plan.
Right. It's meant to take something that's complex or has multiple moving parts and bring it into a simple, formulaic, repeatable, sustainable, either, machine or formula that you can kind of, fall back on, like you said, whether that's a consistent backup eating window, something that you fall back on normally, or a typical way that you kind of lay out your meals, or the kind of structure of it that works for you, and at least would maintain where you are, so that you're not making steps backwards. You can make consistent progress, or at least have a fallback, so that you don't run into those tough times and those tough decisions, right?
Yeah, so there was about 7 or 8 minutes of abstract, so let's get really granular, right? So
okay, let's do it.
This is a fasting podcast, right? Fasting for life. Sometimes I forget, and we just like I honestly do. That was no shot at you. I'm the one who led the charge here in the abstract nature. So really, how we want to apply this is, staying consistent, relying on the system or plan, like Tommy was just saying, but also show you how to push through the dreaded 1 meal a day or 24-hour barrier. There's so many people that know the benefit of pushing the window, but just can't seem to get through it. And the 3 words that we hear with people that have had an experience with fasting, that they've had a love-hate, on-off relationship, or they're new to it and they just can't get through it, they've hit a plateau, they're frustrated, is the words try, if, and hope. And I want to start with try. So Yoda has a really, revolutionary, obviously a fictional character, in some people's minds a real one. But
he's wise, though. He's wise.
Very wise, right? Good writers, right? So there is no, I'm going to butcher it now because I just put myself under the spotlight. Dang it, I can't think of it now. Just do or do not, there is no try, or something like that, right? And the word try, with fasting, it's so simple in the moment. If you've shut your window, or you didn't hit your goal, or you ate something you didn't feel like you should have, right? In that moment, you have the ability to immediately start fasting again and set your timer and get back on track. And it's not like a setback. It's more of the mindset that, when you use the word, okay, I'm going to try to, stick to my window, I'm going to try to fast for 30 hours, you're immediately telling your brain and putting in a stopgap that you're inviting yourself to fail, and then be able to say, well, it's okay, I tried.
Right. You never use the word try like that in a context and see yourself actually succeeding. You're saying try because you're kind of protecting yourself from the emotional pain of that failure, because you're envisioning the failure.
Yep. 100% avoidance of that. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I've done it thousands of times in my life, but it comes down to one of those things where for an eating window or a fasting window, it's, if you get in the practice of making the decision and making it a black or white thing, and not using that word try, but instead of the word try, using commitment words, I'm going to commit to a 24-hour window or a 30-hour window right now, not I'm going to try to do a 30-hour window, then that's a more black and white decision. That's something where there's less to think about in the moment. There's less room for temptation or for error during the next 30 hours, if that's the period you want to stick to, and much more likely to succeed. And if for some reason you don't, much easier to do it again.
Yeah, I love the I will version of this too. I will accomplish this. I will hit my goal. I will call you back, right? So I don't know if any sons and moms out there that might be listening to this, but when your son says in his 20s, yeah, I will try to call you back, mom.
Yep,
well, the word
not gonna
try is the
happen.
problem there. If I say to my mom, I will call you back, you better darn well believe it that I'm going to be calling her back. Right. So
Yeah.
I like the commitment portion, but I also like the will portion of it as well. And if you do say I commit to, then also find somewhere you can put that to reinforce that commitment with in the community group that we have. Send us an email. If you got somebody else that fasts, you got a friend who's on the health journey with you, that extra layer of you're much more likely to disappoint yourself than you are disappoint somebody else. So
Yeah.
never mind just switching the word, but also that reinforcement there. And really, again, the framework of, we hear like, oh, I'll try to keep, I'll try to have one meal. Well, no, it's just have your meal. And then, this will allow you to have some type of framework to fall back on to push through those, whatever it is, 18 hours, 24 hours, or in our case, we're going to use the 30-hour window. The second one is the word if. So the word if connotates, some insecurity. It underlines some self-doubt, like if, it's kind of open-ended, right? So this one is difficult because it really has to come down to anchoring something greater than like, I just want to lose weight or I just want to be healthy. There needs to be some, you said it beautifully. I don't remember when we had this conversation about the anchor. And you need to actually like believe that you can do it. And I've never been a big, positive affirmations guy. So even for me, just, being called out, having an accountability partner like my wife, who's like, no, you don't say that. Like you have big goals for your new business. Like you're not going to say, if I achieve those goals, it's when you go hit those goals. Like, what is it going to look like when you get there? And I love the anchor analogy too.
Yeah. For the anchor, we talk about anchoring to something that's more important. Why are you talking about, or why are you doing fasting? What is your ultimate goal? And if you say it's to lose 5 or 15 or 25 pounds, that's usually not going to be substantial enough to have made those decisions in the moment. Things can still come up, and it's easy to say, well, I want to lose 25 pounds, but peeling back the layers of the onions and figuring out what's deeper than that. Why is that so important to you? What does that look like for you? Is it time with your kids or your grandkids, or quality of life with your spouse? Things that you want to experience? Like, what does that actually look like to you? That's our anchor. And the stronger and heavier that anchor is, it literally stays with us all the time. And it's with us in those moments when those tough decisions come up. And the stronger your anchor, the stronger your why, the easier those kind of decision points become.
And the third one is hope. So one of the people in our network, in our fasting community, actually said something really profound the other day, and it was that hope. When you use the word hope, it
implies that it was a helpless situation, right?
Yeah, it tells your brain that you don't have control.
Yeah.
Like, I hope that I can do X, Y, or Z. Well, this is a difficult one because it takes away that certainty, and you really need to like channel it with your intention. And this is where the affirmations really come into play. So it's not, I hope I can achieve this. It's, I can achieve this. I am, and I do this with my daughter. I am strong. I am beautiful. I am smart. I am funny. Like, these I am statements. But the cool thing about this one with hope is you don't have to hope when you have a good plan. You immediately know, like, I know that I'm going to achieve this because my plan says so. And this is where that jig scenario comes into play.
Yeah, I really like that a lot, because if we've seen that before where someone says, I really hope I can stick to this eating window. So no, don't start the window just yet, because you're not there. You haven't committed to it. So let's go back. What are the struggle points? What is the doubt? What do you see yourself? You're already seeing yourself failing in that moment. So
if you've ever been in sales, it's like objection training with yourself.
Right.
You're like handling the subconscious objections of your own mind. It's like, wait a minute. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, I've already lost the battle. I haven't even started it. So go back a step, see where that doubt's coming in, because for some people it might be taking too big of a step, and we've seen that before, where someone tries to go too aggressively or too long of a fast, and they're not quite ready for it because they haven't broken through some earlier, some previous barrier. And even going from that 24-hour mark up to the 30-hour mark or the 36-hour mark, that can be big. A lot of people have never gone past 24 hours on their own. But like just putting in a little hack, like going from a lunch one day to a dinner the next day can be a big win, a big aha moment, where that makes it much easier to get past that 24-hour mark. But it can all of a sudden break through that kind of glass ceiling that a lot of people have for their fasting durations.
Yes, and why are we talking about that 30-hour mark? So there's some important things. This is a if you've been stuck and you're looking to maybe break a set point, break a plateau. You've got some fasting fatigue, or you've been fasting for a while and you're just kind of like over it.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a good place to start. And the framework for this is kind of a, how do I say this, like a springboard or a fasting hack almost,
Mm-hmm.
where you time it in a way that you really don't feel like you fasted for that long.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do the same thing with sleep, like timing your fast. You know, make it line up with when you're going to sleep for the day, and you can get through an additional 8 hours. You might be able to push your longest fast by another 8 hours, just by doing strategic meal timing leading up to your fast, right?
Yeah, so it's if you're looking to push and you've struggled with making, doing dinner to dinner or lunch to lunch, and you can't seem to make it through that window, what we found to work best, and again, blood sugar reversal, diabetes reversal, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, that 30 to 36-hour mark is really key, where your insulin gets so low that your insulin sensitivity actually starts to increase, and you start to reverse some of that insulin resistance.
Yeah.
Is changing that window and going from like an 11 or 12 o'clock lunch one day to a 7 p.m. dinner the next day gets you to that 30 hours, and you still have the ability to have meals each day, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And because even doing that and then going into the next day, that might be a shorter fast the following day, but that's okay. That that day where you had the 30-hour plus fast is huge, and it's beneficial, and it's it's much more positive than the fact that the next day will be a little bit of a shorter fast. If you're still going to eat every single day, that's okay. It's still a big win, and it's a big opportunity to regain some insulin sensitivity. And you start doing that on a regular basis, you're going to have cumulative effects too that are really powerful.
Yeah, and you could do like a lunch to following day dinner, and then a following day dinner, one meal a day, and then you could do a lunch to a following day dinner. So yeah, there's a shorter window in there from that one night dinner to the following day lunch to start the springboard. But the benefit of hitting that 30 to 36-hour mark is going to outweigh that shorter window if you're used to doing more of the one meal a day, and you get to vary up your schedule. And it's cool
Mm-hmm.
because we know that eating meals earlier in the day, the same meal earlier in the day is the same meal later in the day. The later in the day meal typically tends to have more of an insulin response to it,
Right.
where your body needs more insulin to process the same amount of food or the same meal. So some little things you can kind of focus on as you pivot or break the plateau or undo the fatigue, or are new to fasting and you just can't seem to get it to stick, or whatever it is. There's some non-scale victories in the physical, emotional, and kind of tangible arena and areas that we like to encourage people to look at that you might not be thinking about when you're at these points of embracing the suck, right? So I love the fact that there's so many, and this is just a short list, and there's more because people always tend to share new ones with us, and we're like, oh man, I never even thought about that. But my favorite are the tangibles, so we'll save those for last. But in the physical category, one of the biggest things we hear a lot of times is more energy right off the bat, and after a couple weeks of fasting, typically better sleep follows.
Yeah, I love that one because that one can be really kind of self-perpetuating, because the better sleep you get, the less cravings you get, the better your insulin response, which tends to lead to more stable energy levels, and then thus it becomes easier to fast even for longer, and less cravings means less temptation and easier to stick to the windows. And I'm getting better sleep. It just keeps building on top of each other. So I love that one.
Yeah, the sleep one's big, and yes, in the beginning, as you transition, there might be a couple nights where you don't sleep as well, but it will get better. If you've had sleeping issues, then you really need to focus on getting that quality 7 to 7.3 hours, which is what the research shows decreases those chances of what Tommy just mentioned, on top of some of the physiological things where, you just, if you're up in the middle of the night, you tend to eat, right? Just something as simple as that, to how your hormone levels will change, and your cortisol will be higher, which will then lend you to have more cravings. So a couple of cool things in terms of non-scale victories that we see early on. And then some other stuff that it's in the physical category, like loose clothing, loose rings, things are just fitting differently, even though you haven't seen or not weighing at this point in time because you needed a break, right? If that's a negative reinforcement for you. But I love this. We had this one person that was like, yeah, I think I look younger. And they took a picture from the year prior and put them side by side, and they're like, my skin is definitely clearer, and I can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And less like swelling and less pain in the joints a lot of times. And then these lead to emotional non-scale victories as well. So mood and confidence, and start to hear and get compliments from other people. A lot of times your focus comes back, especially as the brain fog kind of lifts. And as we get into ketosis, that happens even more and more. That focus can just get really, really sharp. And I love that. That's one of the most impactful things for me as I started to get into fasting was that extreme focus that I started to feel. That on the opposite end of that, how I had been feeling was just like I needed a nap all the time. So going from naps to laser focus was just a huge difference for me. And that was one of my favorite parts about fasting, regardless of what the scale was doing.
Right. So if you're in these moments, again, we're talking about non-scale victories, things you can focus on that can help you push through the plateaus. And, my wife was one that was like, yeah, you're just happier. And I'm like, yep, you're right. I am.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Can't argue with that. Less stressed. You have better resistance to foods. The cravings go away. So just some more interesting. We just had someone mention to us too in one of our lives, might've been in our group coaching. I can't remember, where they're like, yeah, I'm down 4 pounds and 2 people have already noticed. And, that's really cool that you can get that positive reinforcement. Like, you just start fasting and your energy changes. So the last category here is tangibles. And we just talked about naps. So I'm going to say this one because I used to wake up prepping for like when I can get my nap in. Sometimes it would be in the car. Sometimes it would be, 15 minutes before a meeting. Sometimes it would be in between patients, like when I have a break or I have a gap in the schedule. But yeah, no naps is a tangible thing, which means you have more time to get stuff done. And then that leads to some of the hacks that we have in terms of making a big to-do list.
Yeah, that naps was big. I basically had no evening time. It was like 7:30 to 9:30, pretty much. I was like gone because that was nap time. The insulin response was just so large, even after just eating a relatively smaller dinner meal. But a couple of the other things that I just loved about getting into fasting and some of these tangibles for me, I started getting projects done that I never thought were going to get ticked off of my to-do list. Just the time and a little bit of extra money from the meals that I had, basically pre-eaten, prepaid for. I started taking that money and that time and putting it over into projects that I actually, got a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment out of. So that one's huge for me. And if you're not sure what to do with yourself and with the extra time for some of the longer fasts, start getting creative with some of those projects. You'd be amazed at what you can get done.
Yeah. And with the less eating out, that extra dough can go a long way. Paying down debt, it can, reward yourself. You can go get your nails done. You can go buy that putter you've been wanting to get. You can, go on the, heck, you can even just as practical as fill up the gas tank again. And I know it's kind of silly to think that way, but a non-scale victory of pushing these windows and hitting your targets. And, the smaller you get, the more weight you lose, the more health benefit there is to getting the weight off, less healthcare costs. Like, there's so many different ways we can go with the tangible category, but it's just some things that people don't tend to think about. They focus on, I've got 18 minutes left until I can break my fast. Well, I mean, that's no way to live either. Right. Like, that doesn't sound fun. So to kind of wrap up here, Tommy, just going through the framework, it's often not reaching the goal that matters, but who we become in the process, and reframing that decision in the moment, when you've had the, sticking point, you've had the tough moment, you've eaten the thing of Oreos, you opened your window, you haven't stayed on track. It's what matters in that decision in that moment where you can rely on that framework, changing the words try, if, and hope to I will commit, not if, but when, and knowing that hope is really more, not I hope I can, but I know I can. And then using these little non-scale victories and then the lunch to dinner framework can really help you kind of push through some of those sticking points, and hopefully, kind of help you break through, re-engage, break the fasting fatigue, and get back on track. So, Tommy, anything else to add there? I think that's probably a lot. If this is the first time listening to the podcast, go back and listen to a few previous episodes. Mm-hmm. You can go to www.thefastingforlife.com, download our Fast Start Guide. We appreciate reviews and feedback. If you've got questions, give us a shout. Tommy, as always, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start Guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.